Hello, coverage inkers. Welcome to Hit the Ground Running. So we figured that we will do a little video for you because sometimes it's easy to get stuck, to get frustrated. And hello, Jim.
Hi, everybody. Hey, I'm Jim Cirile.
I'm Tanya Klein.
And we are the partners here in Coverage Inc. And we've put together 10 ways, actually, to hit the ground running in this new year. So without further ado, let's get to it.
All right. So number one is, of course, about creating, specifically creating material and creating new material. And the reason why we made that the first point is because we see a lot of instances where people send in the same script over and over and over and over again for a lot of years. And you know what? Move on to new material. In fact, one good way to do that is to always work on at least 2 scripts at the same time, because that way you don't get tunnel vision and get stuck with one script. And also don't forget, you always, learn something new with every script you write.
That's right. Your new material almost every time is going to be better than your previous material. And that's because you're learning all the time. We all learn all the time. We're constantly ingesting new material, watching new TV shows, new movies. We hear things that spark something in our mind and go, oh, that could be kind of cool. And we store that in our little memory banks. So it can't help but be better when you write something new. And not only that, but it kind of shakes the cobwebs loose from this, old material that you might have been working on for a while, where you can't necessarily see the forest for the trees anymore, or maybe you've made so many changes that it starts to look like a bit of a hodgepodge. Just get rid of it, start afresh.
One thing you also need to always keep in mind when writing a new script is that, you want to sell it. You want someone to be interested in it. So there are a few things that might not necessarily get people interested. For example, if you create a non-branded superhero movie that will cost $300 million, and you're not going to break in with that. Simply put, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and that kind of segues to the next point, all under the same create category, which is, always be thinking about trying to present things in a way that is going to appeal to a producer. Specifically, the most commercial version of what it is that you like to write. For example, if you like to write a historical period drama, for example, now that's a very tough sell as a spec script. You might have a bit more as a feature spec. You might have a bit more luck in the pilot world. So maybe you might want to rethink this as a pilot, or this might be something where you can take your strengths in that, this is an area that you know really well, and try to imagine, how can I use these strengths in a contemporary television series or in a contemporary feature screenplay? Are there characters or things about the things that I like to do, or these worlds that I like to write, that could actually work in a more conventional or commercial structure? A great example would be Austen Land, which sort of, if you're a Jane Austen fan, for example, that you're taking those elements and you're recombining them in a really fresh and innovative way.
And also, if you like to, let's say you write sci-fi, which often is extremely expensive, can you do contained sci-fi? In fact, if you are good at writing contained sci-fi, oh my God, that's awesome. A great example of that would be, for example, Stowaway, which ran on Netflix maybe a couple of years ago. It was a huge success for XYZ, and it literally was extremely contained. It was one spaceship. That's it. One spaceship, almost only one room in one spaceship. Great. It's sci-fi. It's contained. It's doable. What would be awesome is if you can commit to creating 2 new pieces. For example, 2 features, a feature and a pilot, but 2 new pieces at a minimum. That'd be awesome. So what usually really helps, just to get organized is because often people have ideas. Oh, I have a great idea for the script. And then a week later, I forgot what it was. So if you have an idea, just have a little folder on your computer that says ideas, write a paragraph about your idea, put it in the folder, then you can forget about it until you need it, until you open up the folder and go, let's see what we're going to write next. Also, it's always good to, again, don't only write one piece, write two pieces. For example, you finished a draft of one piece. That's awesome. Now, don't rest on your laurels. Get feedback. And while you're getting that feedback, come up with an outline of another piece. And then when the feedback comes back, you can go back to the first script. And then when you send that out again, you can write a first draft of another script.
And by the way, those log lines, those ideas that you're coming up with all the time, a lot of them are going to be good. Maybe some of them will be less good. And don't be afraid to float them past your friends. That's what your friends are for, at least in theory. Or float them past us here at Coverage Inc. We get people emailing us all the time saying, hey, can I run my log lines past you and tell me I'm not sure what I should be working on? And we're happy to weigh in.
And again, it's free. It's free. So just do it.
Just last week, we got a client who sent us 5 log lines, and we took a look, and 2 of them were excellent, and the other 3 were non-starters. And I'm really glad that I was able to sort of guide that person in the right direction, because maybe they would have chosen poorly. So, but that said, just your friends will tell you, by their level of excitement, ooh, that's good, I like that one, or I'm not really feeling that.
So, of course, you also always have to prioritize your writing. Sometimes, life happens. It's difficult to find the time. So one way to do that is to simply set aside a couple of hours each day when okay, so this is when I'm fresh. I mean, depending on what your work situation is. So I have here, that's a good time. I'm free. I will use this time to write. And, usually, if you tell yourself I'm going to write 7 days a week, which should always be the goal, you're going to make it about 5. So that's still good.
Yeah, Tanya can speak to how terrible I am at this. So this is definitely, a practice which you preach sort of thing here. But look, it's hard. Life intervenes. And not only that, but, social media intervenes, pets intervene, grocery shopping, all this crap that is constantly pulling at us. And then the next thing we know, the 2 hours we've set aside for writing is, 22 minutes. And you're like, why bother? I can't even get into it. I'll write tomorrow. This is rough, but, we're all writers. This is what we ostensibly have committed to do. So we really need to commit to the process and prioritize yourself and your writing first. And, again, this is something that I am just absolutely terrible with. But even, I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm still working on it.
And you know what? Even if you one day, I only have 22 minutes, what do I do? Okay, if you only have 22 minutes, is there something that you were going to research, something you needed to look up? Is there a scene you needed to proofread?
Yeah, no, that's true. And here's another hack, which is good for many things, but, find a writer's group, because that gives you deadlines, or take a class. So many people are afraid to take a class, like it means that you're lesser than or something, which is just ridiculous. Nothing could be further from the truth. You're surrounding yourself with like-minded people who are trying to do the same thing as you. And, you might wind up meeting friends and making good connections. But the main thing is, when you're in an environment like that, you give yourself deadlines. And next thing you know, it's Wednesday and you've got to have 4 pages done by 8 p.m. and it's 5 o'clock. And I'm like, oh, crap, I was going to do X, Y, and Z, but you know what? I better crank out some pages. And next thing you know, after 10 weeks of that, you've got a script. That is a brilliant thing. I heartily encourage. I went back to school 20 years after I graduated from college to get my certificate from UCLA. It was the best thing that I ever did. Why? Not because I learned anything. I mean, I did learn a few things, but because it gave me deadlines.
Let's move on to another thing that you should not do. do not send out material before it's ready. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but you really, really only have one chance to make a first impression, and you want that first impression to be as good as it can possibly be. So, and we all do it. Look, I've sent out material before it was ready. Jim sent out material before it was ready. It's something we all do because we're like, oh, this is good. And we're itching to send out something new. So we're going to send something out.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That is probably one of the hardest ones and one of the biggest mistakes we make over and over again, which is why it's worth repeating right here. Yeah, we're all excited when we finish something and we want somebody to see it. We want that validation. We want somebody to go, yeah, this is good, or whatever. We're just excited about it. You have to kind of learn to temper that enthusiasm. The first person and probably the second and third and fourth person to review your material should be yourself. Read it again, read it 3 days later, read it 5 days later, go back, read it thoroughly from the top, try to experience it as if you were a third party reading it for the first time with fresh eyes, and then maybe get some friends' feedback on it. Certainly don't pull the trigger and make some industry submissions. Coverage, sure. I mean, look, we run a coverage company. Yeah, that's kind of what we're here for. We'll give you that feedback, but pull the trigger and send it to your industry connections when you haven't proven that it's the shit yet. Why would you do that? Well, because we're human and that's what we do. We do it all the time. Try to resist if you can.
Exactly. And, if you don't feel comfortable with coverage, join a writer's group. They will, take the script apart and help you put it back together. However you do it, but get feedback from someone who knows what they're doing. And that usually isn't your mom or your grandma, because, that happens a lot, like your friends, your family, unless they're in the business. You want to put your best foot forward. So shoot for that. And, again, it's doing many drafts. Writing is rewriting. Look, the best example is Jordan Peele. When he wrote Get Out, he said, well, the filmed version, that was the draft number 37 or something. So yes,
something like that.
Yeah, I mean, doing 20 drafts is really, 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 really not unusual. That's usually the way it goes.
Well, this is another really tough one for writers. Yeah, I mean, our movie, To Your Last Death, same thing, Tanya. How many drafts did we go through for that?
Like 27 or something, yeah.
Yeah, 26, 27 drafts, something insane like that. And it took about a year and a half, 2 years before we finally were ready to shoot. But we knew we were ready when it finally got to consider. I mean, it took 27 drafts before it finally got to consider. But when we finally got it, we knew, okay, we got something here. And by the way, the script still kept changing while we were shooting. And by the way, if you want to see it, it's on Amazon Prime. Just look up To Your Last Death. It won 35 awards. It came out pretty good.
Let's move on to part 2, which is the market.
All right.
In other words, who is buying your stuff? How do you get in front of them? What do you do? How do you comport yourself? So the first thing is your query. Again, if you want to run your query letter past us, it's free. Again, it's on our website. It says, hey, we will review your query letters for free. Yet a lot of people simply don't take advantage of that. And then they end up sending out query letters that don't sell and are riddled with typos. Don't do that.
Query letters, we don't charge to review them. So send them along. We're happy to take a look. But here's the main thing to keep in mind with queries that a lot of people don't get. You're not just presenting your idea. You're presenting you. All right. A lot of people just think, here's my log line, or worse yet, here's my log line and like 2 pages of description of my script. Nobody wants to read that. Okay. You've got like 10 seconds from when an executive opens up the email to the point where they decide, trash it, So how can you sell both your project and yourself in 10 seconds? Well, that means, number one, brevity is king. Don't be giving a long, in-depth description of your screenplay. Nobody wants to read that. a log line or something catchy about it, that's good. But number two, what is interesting about you? All right, your life experience. What do you bring to the table? Why are you a cool, interesting, fascinating person that this person wants to get to know? And don't forget, you're trying to get in a relationship with them. You're trying to like work with them for hopefully years, not just on this project, but other stuff as well, especially if it's an agent or a manager. You want to be able to go to coffee with this person and have this person want to take your phone call when you call. So present yourself in a really compelling, fascinating way. What's the most interesting life experience you have? What's a cool anecdote from your past? Maybe you were a plumber. Okay, that's cool. Maybe there's some interesting anecdotes about being a plumber. Maybe that experience dealing with customers makes you, has filled you with a ton of life experience for writing really interesting characterizations. Whatever you have, presented in the most interesting possible way so that the person getting it goes, oh, I want to find out more about this person.
Exactly. And that also brings up the point of attitude. Have a good one, simply because people will want to work with you if you have a good attitude.
Yeah.
People want to work with people they like being around with, because they like being around, simply because, well, you don't want to be around assholes. You want to be around people who are positive, who are upbeat, who are easy to work with. And that also translates into being good in a room. How do you pitch? Like a lot of writers, because we're writers, so we spend a lot of time alone in front of our computer, and it's the cliche of writers, they don't really know how to socialize. Practice your pitch.
Yeah.
Don't go in there and go, well, just don't do that. And the way to avoid that is to write out your pitch. What do you want to say? And then practice it. And I mean, don't rehearse it where it comes off as staged, but know what you're going to say, know how to keep their interest, be friendly, be personable, practice.
Yeah, and Emil Gladstone, who former super agent and now a producer, once told me when I interviewed him, he told me he sends his writer clients to acting school, and he does that specifically so that they can learn to pitch, to present, to be personable, to be good in a room. All right, so it's not just presenting your material in the most compelling way, in a really positive pitch that captures people's attention. It's, being enthusiastic, being energetic, being likable, you're the advocate for your project. You're the spokesperson. If they see your enthusiasm and it comes across as genuine, then that enthusiasm will fill the room. But if you're just like reading your pitch, or you got your head down, you never make eye contact, and then the character was next thing you know, they're checking their phone, they're like, oh, looking around, you're done. That's it. Even if they don't like the pitch, if you present it in a really interesting and compelling way and they like you, they're going to say, that one's not really something we can do anything with, but what else have you got? That you got to keep the ball rolling, and that's how you do it.
Exactly. And that brings us to our next point: who to pitch to. Like, how do you find the people that would be interested in your material? Because let's face it, if someone is known to produce only action movies, they're not going to be interested in your historical drama.
Oh, damn, that's what I've been doing wrong all
So do your research, find the people that you vibe with, and who will vibe with your material. And how do you do that? Look at IMDb Pro, for example. Who are these people? What have they done? So when okay, so I have this script. It is, let's say, a contained horror film. All right, who makes contained horror films? Get a list together. Look at IMDb Pro, and if it's a horror film, maybe Shudder. Who are the producers who have a lot of Shudder movies? Make your list.
There's a lot of ways to do this. It's going to take a little legwork, but it's fun legwork. I mean, this is the part of the process that we as writers tend to really enjoy because it's writing adjacent, but it's not actually writing. So we still feel like we're being productive and doing something to advance our career, which we are, but it's not actually writing, which is great. But it doesn't matter what genre it is. It's as simple as figuring out who has made movies or television shows in the genre that you like, finding these people, and then figuring out how to get to them. All right. It's as simple as, for example, we just did a panel a few weeks ago on writing holiday romantic comedies. Okay. And by the way, you can actually watch the video of that. It's available on our website on VOD. Okay. Really great panel. And we had to find people in the industry who are making holiday rom-com movies to put this panel together. So we did it in the exact same way that we would if we were writers trying to find producers to pitch our project to. We looked to see what movies were being made on Hallmark, on Lifetime, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of them out there. We found those producers on IMDb. We looked them up. We cold emailed them. There's very few, I think only one or two that we actually had any connection with. At the beginning, we just cold emailed them and introduced ourselves. Boom. That's how we did it. We had a list of about 15 people. We wound up with, I think, about 8 or 9 out of that. So that was really great. Do the same thing with whatever it is you're doing, but don't do it until the script is ready. All right. Don't waste their time. When that door opens, you want to make sure that you've already proven that it's worth their time. You've gotten to consider, you've gotten really good peer feedback, or people have told you, yeah, this is the one, then it's time to go seek those people out. And the internet is your friend. You can find just about everybody.
And, that's true for producers. It's also true for agents and managers.
Yeah.
First of all, as a new writer, someone who's trying to break in, it will be a tad easier for you to focus on managers as opposed to agents. What types of scripts are they repping? What types of writers are they repping? Look that up. Again, IMDb Pro is your friend. So, what is their client list and what types of scripts do these clients write? Who are these clients? So who do you vibe with? Again, same thing as with producers. Find the people that are most likely to be receptive to you and to your material.
Yeah. And by the way, finding these people, even with the internet, it's a little bit tricky. Because the trades aren't what they once were. Specs and projects aren't selling like they used to. In the old days, when I was coming up in the 90s, it would simply be, you'd look in the trades to see who sold something because there was stuff selling all the time. And that would be who you focused on. Well, there's still a little bit of that, but it's a little bit more difficult now. So, subscribing to all the various tracking boards is a really good way to start. Tracking B is a great one. Tracking Board is another one. They all have services where you can actually subscribe to them, and you can see the interaction from the agents and managers who are sending material out, who are talking to each other. In many cases, you can't interact with them. Like on Tracking B, you can just sort of subscribe and be a fly on the wall. But by doing that, you see who the players are, and it's incredibly helpful for finding out how the business works and learning to be a student of the business. And then you add those people to your list. Okay. Here's one more thing to keep in mind, and that is the importance of assistance. Okay. If you're trying to find an agent or a manager, remember, how do these people become agents and managers? They start off as assistants. Okay. And what that means is they have to build their list when they're assistants. By the time someone is ready to get promoted from an assistant to agent or manager, they've usually built their own list. They're usually what we call hip pockets, which are people who are sort of unofficial clients that these people like and have read and want to work with. And so that when they get to the point where they are promoted, they're ready to hit the ground running and they already have a client list. It doesn't mean it's full, but it usually means by the time someone's promoted, they've got 6 or 10 people writers who they've already been working with, developing their material in a hip pocket capacity. That's who you need to target. All right. These are the people who are reading, they're hungry, they're looking to put feathers in their cap. And and they're looking to sign people. They're looking to develop new talent, right? So how do you find these assistants who are going to be promoted? Well, one way is you go on IMDb Pro. It's worth that. What is it, $129 a year, something like that for the subscription, and you find, I don't know, let's say Verve, for example, the agency, and you look on their list and you see, all the list of their staff, and it says their titles, agent, and sometimes it will say assistant to Ms. So-and-so or whatever. Well, that's perfect. So query those people. I always advise people to query the lowest level person on the ladder, the lowest rung on the ladder, because those are generally the people who are reading. Like, you go to the head of the company, they're not reading. They don't have time to read. If anything, they're going to read coverage that's done by the assistant. Okay. So get in good with the assistant, be nice to them, be friendly. They may be reading and they may be looking for you.
Exactly. And of course, please don't be rude. I know it's always or very often frustrating and you feel like you're not getting anywhere. And, sometimes people tend to be rude to assistants, secretaries, whatever. Don't do that.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
you want to have a good relationship with these people, and remember, even if that person doesn't get promoted this year, they will be promoted at some point, and they will be an agent, and they will be a manager, and they will remember you. Hopefully, they'll remember you in a positive way.
And that brings us to our next topic, which is contests, festivals, fellowships, all of the good stuff. And I know you guys are spending probably a lot of money on contests. So whatever we said about producers and agents and managers, same goes for contests. Do research them, because not all contests are necessarily worth the money. So you're a writer, you don't have enough money, we assume. So just do your research, don't throw your money away.
Yeah, and we're going to put up a list right now. You're going to see of a handful of contests that we feel here at Coverage Inc. are worth the money and worth your time. It's not an exclusive list. There may be others that we haven't included. And it doesn't mean if you're not on this list that your contest sucks. It's just ones that we have had experience with and we know that they're legit and that we think are worth the money.
Yeah,
Okay.
and by the way, we're not getting any kickbacks, or we're not from anybody. We're not affiliated with them at all in any way, shape, or form.
Well, except for Get Rep Now.
Except for Get Rep Now, which is ours, of course.
Which is our own thing. And it's not actually a contest, but it kind of works like a contest in some ways. So what's some general contest advice, Tanya?
Well, some general contest advice. I mean, I think in many ways it is, first of all, the same advice about not sending it out, not sending your material out before it's ready, because then you're just throwing your money away. So only send stuff that you're fairly confident in. And, also you have certain contests that have, let's say, certain reputations to look for certain material. For example, Nickel is, a great contest if you can get anywhere. I mean, with Nickel in particular, even if you make it, not necessarily be a finalist, but, make it to a semi-finalist, that's already fantastic. And that's definitely worth several emails to the people,
Get signed off that.
Yeah, absolutely. But for example, there is a certain perception, maybe true, maybe not true. I mean, looking at the scripts that usually make it through, it might be that, for example, Nickel is a bit more highbrow, let's say. In other words, if you have, a down and dirty horror script, you might not necessarily, it might not necessarily be the best fit.
Yeah. And by the way, they've been trying to change that perception in recent years, because they're sort of aware that that's how people view them. So they've been encouraging their readers to seek out genre material and other things. But let's be real. We all know what is going to make, the Nickel top 5. That's, the 5 Nickel fellows are going to be a certain type of material, and that's fine. So look, pick and choose your contest that makes sense for you. And by the way, it tags off what we were saying before. There are going to be plenty of contests out there that are not worth the money. So look, unless you've got an infinite budget, there's most most festival contests are not really going to be worth the money in terms of your career. Okay, in terms of like, they're not going to be tracked by the industry. The industry doesn't care about, so-and-so film festivals, that your script won third place in that contest. They don't care. It doesn't hit their radar. Where it may be of value is that you may wind up meeting like-minded people. You might wind up meeting a writing partner, for example, or a director or a producer looking for low-budget material. So just in terms of making connections, those are great. But to actually move your career forward, be judicious about what contests you choose, because the industry only pays attention to a small handful.
Yeah. So to piggyback off of that, if you are submitting to festivals, make sure, if you get anywhere, make sure those are festivals you can actually afford to go to, because that is how you actually, if you're doing the festival circuit, that is how you meet the people. If it's just, oh, well, I won third place at such and such festival, not going to do you any good. However, what could potentially do you any good when it comes to meeting people is if, you go there and say, hi, my script, nice to meet you. So but that also means, you have to spend several days there. You have to actually schmooze. You have to talk to people. You have to do the activities.
Yeah, seriously, that's a great point, Tanya. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you win a festival and you don't go there. So in fact, just recently, we were nominated for something, and it was a New York film festival in New York, and we didn't go because it would have cost $5,000. So, there you go. You got to make these choices. Pick your budget and then make the best choices for what makes sense for your budget. One more thing we want to talk about here under contests is, of course, Get Rep Now. Shameless self-promotion. So Get Rep Now is coming up in March of this year. In the past, we've gotten a lot of writers, meetings. We've gotten several of them signed. What we try to do is we try to introduce the best of the scripts that come in, scripts that get a consider, to the town. Again, it's not a contest. You're not competing against anybody. So if we get 20 considers, we will present those 20 scripts to our industry panel, equally weighted, all of them. It's not this one's the best or anything like that.
Get your script ready.
Yeah, get your script ready, which means start working on it now.
All right. So that brings us to our next topic, which is paid services. And again, we're not affiliated with any of these services. We do not get a kickback from any of these services, except, of course, we're affiliated with our own Coverage Inc. But other than that, so
by the way, how do we get affiliated? How do we get those kickbacks?
I know, darn.
I'd like to know.
So there are several paid services in this town, of course, that claim that they can put you in front of industry. And again, some are more successful than others. So do your, due diligence, know your budget, know which direction to go to. So, of course, the first one would be Inktip, which is a service that lists your scripts. Yeah. And Inktip, I think usually we're talking independent producers looking for lower budgets. Also often producers just, trying to get their first feature off the ground. So they may or may not have, the funds raised, or may not know how to get access to the money.
Yeah. And look, you can be on Inktip, you can have a posting on Inktip for years and never get a bite. But if you happen to have something that one particular producer happens to be looking for, Casey Cromie, who was on our Kathleen, who was on our holiday rom-com panel, she sold a script or optioned or somehow, I don't know, but anyway, she had a piece of material get acquired. It was a holiday rom-com script that she had posted on Inktip. So you never know. But yeah, like Tanya said, it's mostly lower budgeted producers. You're not going to find Hollywood producers on Inktip, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means know who's on there. And if your material appeals to those type of people, it's worth the $30 a month, probably,
Yeah. And then there are other services like Virtual Pitch Fest. Basically, that is a service where you write your query and they send your query, and you will always, the nice thing is you always get a response. I mean, of course, for on their end, on the industry end, it's basically they check a box, yay, nay, or, you know, send me a script. Again, I mean, same thing. Know who you're sending to. So before you buy a pitch to send to this particular person, check out this particular person. So if you check out this particular person, IMDb Pro, and you realize, well, they really haven't done anything in the last 10 years, maybe that's not, you know, worth the money.
Yeah, good point. So, all right, here's the thing about Virtual Pitch Fest, okay? And we've used it, and you know, disclaimer, I got signed from Virtual Pitch Fest around 12 years ago. My writing partner at the time and we got signed to a management company called Roar from Virtual Pitch Fest. And because of that, we wound up getting signed to Gersh. Okay, so I personally know it works. I also personally know there are people who are on that list that should not be on there, and they need to do a better job of vetting their list, because there are real people on there and there are people who are not real. All right. So yeah, like Tanya said, do your due diligence. Okay. If you buy 25 pitches from Virtual Pitch Fest, spend the time, do the legwork, IMDb every one of those people, and see how real they are before you send your query, you know. And don't forget, you know, if you send out 25 queries and you get 1 or 2 yeses, that's a great response.
There is also Stage 32. There's Roadmap Writers. Both of them work very similarly. You can take classes, you can take seminars, and you can meet industry people, and you can get in front of industry people. They also have video pitches. They have written pitches.
Both of them are incredibly valuable, and a direct path to meeting real decision makers, including, you know, hungry agents and managers who really are genuinely looking for good talent. I mean, it's not cheap, but you know, look, what is it, 35 bucks?
Yeah, I think, yeah, per pitch. Yeah, I think something like that.
40.
And I mean, of course, the same thing applies. Check out the people before you buy the pitch. And if it is a video pitch, just practice before you do.
Yeah, because you got like 7 minutes. So you know, again, it's about you, and it's about your material. It's not just about the material. All right. You need to be the person they want to work with.
And then we have Spec Scout, we have Blacklist. I'm sure everyone's heard of Blacklist. And of course, as with everything else, there are pros and cons. So Blacklist, for example, you get feedback from the people on Blacklist, and sometimes it's good feedback. Sometimes the person who's giving you feedback doesn't necessarily know the difference between shit and shinola.
Yeah.
So
we, you know, we've never, I don't think, had any experience with Spec Scout here, so we can't really speak to it. We've heard some people have had good results with them. So, you know, your mileage may vary, right? But we do know people who posted stuff on Blacklist, and look, you know, the industry does pay attention to blacklist.com. So that's important. However, as you know, David Williams, one of our Get Rep Now considers from last year, was telling me, you know, he had a script that got all 9s on the Blacklist. I believe it was Clementine. And, you know, it was the #1 most requested script on the Blacklist for, I think, 2 weekends in a row, maybe even 3. I don't know. Something like 60 industry people downloaded the script. He never got a single response from that, which is astonishing to me, because, you know, we've always heard as writers, you know, you get all 8s on Blacklist, you're golden. That's like the golden ticket, you know. And maybe that's what it takes to get someone to actually pay attention and go, oh, you got 8s on Blacklist? Okay, sure, I'll take a look at your script if you're pitching them. But his script got all 9s and was the #1 most downloaded script for at least 1 or 2 weekends in a row. He didn't get an email. he didn't get a call. So this tells me that, blacklist by itself is not necessarily the be all end all. Don't expect that's going to open some doors for you. So what David smartly did was he took that information and he let everyone know about it. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up.
Let's move on to our next part, and that is how to sell yourself, your material, the fun part that all writers are usually terrible at.
Part 3, how to sell.
Yeah, so Jim already talked about, if you have hype or you have a little bit of heat on something or you've got good news, share. Why? Because in this city, it's all about, I don't want to be the first person to say yes, because that might come back and it might bite me in the butt. So has somebody else already said, oh, this is good, so then it's okay for me to also say this is good.
Nobody trusts their own opinion. It's way too easy to second guess yourself. People are nervous. They don't want to be fired. It's real easy to be fired. You make a decision, you promote, and you say to your boss, hey, this is worth your time. What if your boss disagrees with you? And now your boss is like, I don't trust this person's judgment. I just wasted an hour and a half reading it, blah, 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 blah. And then, so it's better to just sort of like keep your mouth shut. So when something good does happen, do what David Williams did, which was, I like to call it cross-collateralize the hype, which simply means let everyone know about it. Okay. Now, there's always things that happen to us where, something at least a little bit good happens. We get a consider on our draft or something like that. But we never think about like, what can we do with that? And the answer is everything. Suppose you've got a couple of producers who've requested your script off of Inktip or Virtual Pitch Fest, and it's out to them right now, and you haven't heard back from them in 3 or 4 weeks or 3 or 4 months, right? So now you get a consider back from Coverage Inc. It's like, oh, I got to consider on my script. Tell those producers. This gives you the excuse to contact them. This is exactly what David Williams did. He knows Joey Tuccio, who is the head of Roadmap Writers. He's friendly with Joey Tuccio, and Joey Tuccio then basically emailed a bunch of his connections through Roadmap Writers to let everyone of them know that, hey, this guy David Williams, he just got all 9s on Blacklist, and his script was the #1 downloaded for 2 weeks in a row. So while he didn't get any requests directly from Blacklist, what he did get requests from was Roadmap Writers, and I think something like a dozen managers then wanted to read his script. You can do the same thing. Whenever someone else is interested, whenever anything the slightest bit good happens, that gives you the excuse to go back to the other people who haven't gotten back to you yet and tell them, hey, check me out. And hopefully this lights a little fire under their butt.
Exactly. And now, of course, stating the obvious, don't overdo it, as in don't make yourself a pest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they already have overflowing email boxes. Do not make yourself a pest. And here's another thing, in case you don't have anything cool to report, but let's say you have some sort of connection that you figure, I haven't checked in a long time and they haven't heard from me. And is that even still a connection? I don't know, but I don't have anything to report. How about, gee, maybe this person just sold a spec, or maybe this person just, released a movie. And so just say, hey, my God, I saw your new movie. That was really awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, definitely. Not only will they appreciate it, but, it keeps the lines of contacts open. It keeps you in the forefront of their mind. And, it keeps you vital and current and present. And this is crucial for maintaining relationships in town. There are always going to be people who you're dealing with for a period of time, and then you don't deal with them for a while. So, send them a Christmas card. All right. So that's, but again, like Tanya said, don't overdo it. Boundaries are important. Everybody likes a check-in, but nobody likes a lot of check-ins, especially if it's somebody, if their impression of your script wasn't that good, don't be doing that. Engage the enthusiasm and respond accordingly.
Exactly. And that brings us to our next section, which is closing the deal.
Ooh, my favorite
Yay. So, in other words, finding a rep, choosing a rep, keeping that rep, all the good stuff. So, let's say you have people interested. So you have this gold-plated problem of, well, I actually now have several people interested. What do I do?
What do you do? Well, you make the best choice for yourself. And that choice, by the way, is probably not going to be anything with 3 letters. All right. By that, I mean, the big agencies, because they're the ones who will sell you the most. And of course, it's enticing as hell. It sounds amazing. Like, oh my goodness, I get to be with so-and-so 3-letter agency. How cool is that? Look at me. But the truth of the matter is the small or mid-level agent, 5 times out of 6 is going to be the one that actually brings the hustle for you. Say you're represented by so-and-so 3-letter agency, okay? And you are one of 80 clients that agent has. Well, how much attention do you think that person is really going to be able to give to you? All right. So when you think that this person is going to take your phone calls and this person is going to be out there hustling for you, you're number 80. You are literally the lowest on the list. He's going to be promoting all the ones who are making, or she, who are making him or her money in meetings, and you're an afterthought. So, but the small to mid-level agent or manager, maybe they've got 20 clients, maybe they've got 25. Their whole bread and butter is going to be keeping all of their clients working as much as possible because they need to make more money. They don't have a whale client or 10 who is constantly bringing in the money and diverting all of their time and attention. So, don't be misled by, the shiniest offer. The shiniest may not be the best. Go with your gut. Who feels right?
Yeah, exactly. And that is so important. Go with your gut, as in, who do I connect with? Who understands me and where I want to go? Who gets my material?
I'll give you a quick example to illustrate this point. So back in the day, I was represented by William Morris. And I thought, how cool is this? I'm represented by William Morris. Look at me. And that and, $5 would get you a cup of coffee, because they never did anything for me beyond being able to say that I was represented by William Morris. I was still having to do all the work myself, which, by the way, you should always keep doing. We'll speak more on that in a moment. But so I lasted about 2 years with them. And finally, I just left because they weren't doing anything for me. I was lost. I was on a client list somewhere, and that was about it. And I wound up instead going with an agent who represented mostly below the line people, which is industry term for technicians, cinematographers, gaffers. These people often at a certain level have representation as well. And he had just a couple of writers, and I think maybe a director or 2. So he had about 25, 30 clients, of which 3 or 4 were writers and directors, and the rest were all below the line types. Best agent I ever had. I got calls from him 2 or 3 times a week. Hey, I'm having lunch with so-and-so tomorrow. I'm going to throw your name in the ring. I don't know if there's anything in it, but what the hell? This was the relationship that I had with the late, great John Fury. God rest his soul. Man, I miss him. But what a guy. So, yeah, if they're young and hungry, or small and hungry, mid-level, and they've got a little hustle, go with that.
Exactly. And that, even if you're not signed, let's say you're hip-pocketed, which means you're not technically signed, but, the script that you present to them, they like it. They're going to give this a spin. Great place to be. Keep in touch. Give them pitches, give them log lines, give them other scripts.
So here's the deal with hip pockets. Hip pockets are actually a surprisingly great place to be. What that means is a hip pocket is just, you have a relationship with a representative, but they're not signing you for whatever reason. It could be you haven't risen to the level of importance enough where they can present you to the partners and get them to sign off on it. Maybe they feel you need a little bit more development. There's a lot of, or maybe they just can't sign anyone else right now. There's a lot of reasons why you might be hip pocketed. None of them are really bad. It just means you're in the on deck circle and you have a chance to start a relationship with someone and prove yourself. This is phenomenal. It's like you could not be in a better place. There's nowhere to go but up from there. Well, there is a place to go. It's also, you could also go down if you don't write, if you complain, if you're like, what have you done for me lately? They're not going to want to keep you around. But so look, don't be too upset if someone doesn't offer to sign you, if they're just like, let's work on something together, and there's no offer of representation forthcoming, but they're responding to your emails or reading your log lines or working on developing your script with you. Great. Don't ask any questions. You're hip pocketed. Enjoy it. It's a great place to be.
Exactly. And I mean, the same is really true for a soft pass as well. Let's say somebody reads your work and they're like, well, great script. I really enjoy your writing. I like your voice. I like you. However, this material just right now, there's nothing I can do with it. That's an open door for when you have material that they can do something with.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, a soft pass is it's actually that's also a good place to be. Sure, it's a pass for now, but the reason it's soft is because they see potential in you and your material. So that what that's basically doing is it's laying down a challenge. It's saying, come back to me with something as good as this, but more marketable, or come back to me with something that's just as more marketable, but a bit more polished, that's more closer to the bullseye that I can sell. Whatever it is, you're almost there. The lines of communication are still open. They're interested. All right. Soft pass means they're interested, just not in this specific piece of material at this time. Again, that is gold for a writer. You're not just about one script, hopefully. Hopefully you are about many scripts over the course of your career. And if this one opens the door a crack, it did its job.
Exactly. And that brings us to our next topic. Let's say you got repped. So your next job is to stay repped, because there are also a lot of mistakes you can make that will, make your agent and manager reconsider the relationship. So how are you going to be a good client? So there are a few don'ts. For example, don't make a pest out of yourself, as in don't call or email every week saying, hey, what have you got for me? Yeah. Don't do that.
A check-in email every now and again is usually okay, and different reps define every now and again in different ways, and it depends on how much they like you, how busy they are. It could be once a month. It could be every week, but probably not unless something is actually going on. But you will find it's very easy to cross the line from, cool and just checking into being a pest. You really have to read the room. And if you sort of detect that you're moving into pest zone, pull back quickly.
Exactly. And of course, the most important thing for you to do to be a good client is to produce material. Don't just give your agent and or manager one script and then be a pest. Hey, have you sold it yet? Hey, have you sold it yet? Don't do that. Don't do that. Just don't do that. You got to keep producing. And especially if you have a manager, don't just hand them, scripts. You can say, hey, here are my next, 5 log lines. Yeah. What do you think? Which one should I focus on? So they have investment.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about that a lot, which is, getting the representative invested in the material early, so that they have some skin in the game. That is crucially important. A representative will always work harder to sell a piece of material that they have some investment in. They have their ideas on, they have their imprimatur on it in some way, shape, or form. Plus, they will like you better if you work with them to develop the material in the first place, and if you listen to them and incorporate their ideas. If they say, hey, it would be really great if the pet dog, what if it's an ocelot? And you're like, ocelot? That's a terrible idea. But you're like, well, all right, I'll try it. I'll see if I can make it work. Of course, you don't say that to them. You go, ocelot? Well, that's an interesting idea. Sure, let's give it a shot. Let's see how it flies. And then you actually do it and you give it to them. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But the point is, they will go, they took my idea. I like this person.
Yeah. So the main thing still is you need to create material. They need material to be able to sell. And let's face it, spec market these days is not what it used to be. So the more material, the more choices, the more chances they have to sell, the better it will be for you and the more they will like you. The worst thing you can do if you are signed is to not write. Because I think it's easy to just go, okay, I am repped now. I've worked long and hard and now I am repped. So now I can rest on my laurels. No, you can't.
Go out there and sell my script. Here's a little bit of bullshit that most representatives might drop when they're first trying to get you to sign with them. I work for you. I'm on the so-and-so team. I've literally had these things said to me many times throughout my career. Okay. This translates to, I do not work for you. Don't you dare ask me to do anything for you. I will deign to do things for you when I feel like doing it. All right. If you know how to actually understand what they're saying to you, your life will go a lot easier. Which brings us to our next header, which is expectations management. All right. So let me just talk a little bit about this one. There are two. Okay. From the agent or manager, as Tanya was saying, they expect you to produce material. 2 scripts per year or 2 pilots, whatever it is that you do. That's what they expect.
If you can do more, hey, great. If you can do more and it's good, oh my God.
Yeah, if it's good is the big question. But basically, I've been told many times when I did the Agents Hot Sheet column for Creative Screenwriting magazine for a decade, and I interviewed agents and managers every month for 10 years. They told me this over and over and over. The number one way to kill your relationship with your rep, not producing, all right? And expecting them to go out and try to sell a busted script, as they call it, which is a script that's already been out, and by the way, it may not be busted to you. You might look and say, he sent it to 5 places. There's 80 other producers I want to get this script to. That doesn't matter. In your rep's mind, that is a busted script. They tested the marketplace. They didn't get the response they were looking for. Move on. You might find another opportunity for it yourself down the line. That's great. But don't expect your representative to. Your representative wants new, 2 new scripts a year. So that's one half of the expectations. The other half of the expectations are your expectations as a client of what they are going to do for you. This goes back to what I just said before. Expecting them to do work for you. All right. It's best if you keep those expectations really, really low and keep doing the hustle that got you represented in the first place. Don't sit back and go, I'm represented now. I don't have to do anything. I'll just wait for the phone to ring. Phone's not going to ring. I mean, unless you're really, really lucky and you've got some heat and, you've got some projects that are in various different stages. Yeah, then the phone will continue to ring. But if you're just starting out afresh and you haven't been introduced to the town yet and you're not already a working writer, you have to keep working it. You have to do the agents or reps job for them. And of course, keep them abreast that you're doing it, because you don't want to do anything that they're not going to be cool with. But, so you can say like, hey, I know so-and-so producer, he wanted to read this outline when I was done with it. I'm going to send it over to him if that's okay with you. And they'll either say, yeah, sure, go for it. Or no, let's handle that in-house first, but You have to keep driving it all the time. But again, don't be a pest.
Exactly. And that brings us to how to handle the politics of your relationship with your management team and or your agent. So basically, to boil it down in a nutshell, don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
So that would be it in a nutshell. Hey, you haven't done anything for me. How dare you? Don't do that. I mean, it should be, it shouldn't need to be said. However, often you kind of need to say it because writers getting frustrated because, again, they thought, ooh, now I have representation. That means my career is going to take off. Right now, I can quit my day job. And I quit my day job yesterday. So now, how do I pay my bills?
Oh, that's another one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Quitting
So
your
then,
day job, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, you have to get me work because I don't have any income right now. Like, well, who told you to quit your day job? No agent or manager is ever going to tell you to quit your day job unless you have multiple jobs that they are booking for you and that the town can perceive your heat. So in the meantime, yeah, that librarian gig, keep it. It's a good gig.
Then you also have to handle your politics with producers. Let's say you, a producer likes your script, they option your script, they're raising funds for your script, they want to make your script. They will have notes. Do those notes. Don't say, well, you like the script, that's why you optioned the script, and the script works as it is. So I'm just not going to do any notes yet. Don't ever do that. Don't ever say that. Go, thank you for your notes. I will implement them.
Yeah, and that can be tough sometimes because there are some very gifted producers out there, and there are producers who are, desperately trying to be gifted, but, just don't have the gifts. So, I mean, look, apart from not writing, the other way that writers kill their relationships with their agents and managers is by not handling the politics of their last assignment well. That gets back to the agents and the managers, and you become problematic. All right. You do not want to become problematic. Now, this can be really tough sometimes. I mean, Tanya and I can speak to a producer we dealt with not that long ago. It was extremely difficult to deal with this person, but still, we did our best to jump through that producer's frankly ridiculous notes and deliver what we believed was material at a pretty high level that still delivered what that producer expected. In other words, we hit the notes, we did them while still staying true to what we felt was, the character's journey and, having it be a good piece of material. That was what we ultimately delivered back to them. But boy, was it tough. And we kept our mouths shut about it for the most part until we had to actually take this producer to court. But the point is, don't be thinking that your representative, as friendly as you may be with them, is someone you can just grouse to about so-and-so producer. Because you know what? That representative is going to have a relationship with that producer for decades, regardless of their own personal feelings about that producer. They might think that producer is completely incompetent or an asshole or a hack, whatever. Your job is to be diplomatic. Your job is to say, well, the meeting went really well. I'm really excited about this, That's what they want to hear.
Exactly. I mean, it's the same thing. Even if you think the note is idiotic, and hey, it very well may be. We've gotten a lot of pretty idiotic notes at times from producers. You don't say, oh, this person is an idiot, don't know what they're doing. How can you say that? Like, well, yes, challenging is a good word, but I think, it can really give that script the extra oomph, make it unique, make it stand out. It might be a bit, challenging, but I'll put on my thinking cap and I will make it work. That's kind of the spirit that they want anyway.
Yeah. And the other part of it is that don't think that your representative is not talking to those producers or the directors or whoever and getting their side of it. Okay, because they may not like you, even if you're trying your best to be nice and diplomatic. They might be hearing it from that side, and that could be polluting your relationship with your manager. Very brief anecdote. Years ago, my writing partner at the time and I wrote a script on spec for a very well-known director, based on that director's idea. Didn't get paid for it. Presented the script to the director, and the director absolutely hated it. The director trashed it. It wasn't what he wanted at all. He wanted X, Y, and Z changes to it. So we did. We made all those changes to it, sent it back to him, and the director hated it even more, to the point where he's like, I don't want to deal with these people ever again. And we had a conversation with our manager, which went something like this. Well, X wasn't really feeling your script, guys. And, I know you jumped through hoops, so you guys did great work. Don't worry. Everything's cool with me. But I just want you to know, I don't think it's happening with this guy. And we said, that's okay. It was great. It was a great experience. Really enjoyed working with him. On to the next. And you know what? The relationship with the manager was fine, even though that director probably was screaming about how incompetent we were on the phone to our manager. Okay. So we saved that deal. We handled the politics well. We could have just as easily been, that guy is an idiot.
As a writer, you always want to be easy to work with. You want to be diplomatic. You want to be enthusiastic. You want to be kind of laid back. As a screenwriter in this business, you're kind of the low man on the totem pole.
Yeah.
Sorry to say. If, like, for example, okay, so I started my professional life as a playwright. Being a playwright is great because everyone treats you like God. It's fantastic. They cannot change a comma in whatever you write without your express permission. And it's really all about, you're it. That's why, opening night, curtain call, the last person that walks on stage is the writer to a standing ovation. It's fantastic. So it doesn't. Movies and theater in that respect are extremely, extremely different.
Very replaceable. And, there's 50 other writers that are being presented to them for any given project by everyone in the town every single day. So be thankful for being in that position in the first place. That said, it may suck sometimes and you may need to eat it. That's just the way it is. But above all, it's about being professional. The more professional you are, the more even keel, the more easy to work with, the more people will want to work with you. Those are really the best ways to stay in once you get in. And with that, I think that's our 10 ways to hit the ground running, right, Tanya?
Yes, it is. So you can always reach us at info@coverageinc.com. That's Inc, I-N-K. And we're happy to help. And yeah, let's hit the ground running.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We wish all of you a really killer year, success, momentum, and, above all, sanity.
Yes. Bye.